When looking to buy second-hand caravans, people get trapped on a few things, which are pricing, condition, and layouts of the caravan. But I believe that inspections are the most important things that you need to do when looking at a second-hand caravan, like this one. So today, we're going to answer the question, what checks and inspections you need to do before purchasing a second-hand caravan on the exterior part. Hello and welcome again to the Caravan Doctor, the one place you want to stop by before going to purchase your second-hand caravan. In today's video, we're going to have a look over the exterior of the caravan and what you need to check before you actually take the decision of purchasing one. So before the actual buying process, what I like to do usually when turning up to a caravan is a few very simple things, but they're actually very effective once you get the hang of them and you realize that a lot of your problems could be spotted on the outside, which could at the end impact the price that you're going to pay for the caravan. So let's start with the initial external checks. What I like doing is, whilst I turn up to the caravan, just have a nice little walk around it. And why do I do that? I'll explain straight away. Whilst you're doing that, before even going into the caravan, you need to be sure that it is looking fairly good on the outside. And that is something really important because it will show you what sort of attention and in what condition it is at the moment. Going around the backside, having a look at the back panel because they all vary in the way they've made and the way they've connected, but we'll dive into that in just a second. Having a good look around of the sides and the front is really important. And whilst doing that, you have to pay attention to a few things. The external paneling of the caravan should look in a good condition. And by that I mean there shouldn't be any holes or any massive spots where something's hit the caravan, potentially punctured the external layer, because that is a place where water can get in. And whilst you're on the side, doesn't matter either on the door side or on the other side, because both of them need to be in good condition, you need to look for any differences in the paneling, the way they actually join, the straightness of the whole thing, because that will give you information that the caravan's chassis is in good shape. It hasn't been twisted or hit hard, which can change the way the panels actually sit. They need to be straight as possible. That's what we're aiming for. Also, whilst you're having your walk, you want to stand in front of it and have a good look from the side, which again will tell you if there has been any twists in the caravan throughout its life, the left side and the right side. And we'll talk about the roof in a few minutes. One small trick that you can actually use to see if the caravan's been bent in any sort of way is have a look at the door, which, if being the original one, like in this example, or change, does not matter because the frame of it will give you a very good clue if the caravan has a slight twist to it. The actual door needs to sit almost perfect into the frame without having any corners sticking out. And here is what I mean close up. When you look at the actual frame, the door needs to be in its rightful place. If it's not sitting correctly in the door frame, that will probably mean that there is some sort of twist in there, which we'll have to have a deeper look if we want to find out what is causing it. Next thing on the outside is the front panel, because that's the place which takes most of the pressure whilst towing the caravan. You need to have a nice look at it from all sides and make sure that all the connections here, windows, and everything else is looking good. There is no openings or cracks, and that the sealant is in the correct place like it's doing just here. It needs to be sitting tight to the body of the caravan, and all additional elements need to be sitting flush without any gaps, either from the front or from the backside. This is very important because when you're observing the front panel and the windows, it gives you very good identification of what kind of life the caravan's had up until now. If there's any patched up damages here, which is not the end of the world if they're done correctly, but something like a little bit of tape or a lot of silicone around the joints is usually a really bad sign. The handles also need to be checked if they're not moving around, and so are the windows. If they're sitting correctly in their spots, nice and tight, and there is no places where you can actually get your fingers straight in and you can get into the inside of the caravan. You also want to do exactly the same thing on the backside. Have a nice look. Make sure that there is no broken elements of the caravan, because all these will let water in. Make sure that your handles are in place, and if you have any windows on the backside, they're nice and tight, all sealed up, and all these are engaged. Also, the lights need to be in reasonably good order, even though there could be dirt or grime in there. Afterwards, when hooking up the car to your caravan, you need to make sure that all your lights are working correctly. Otherwise, it's unsafe to move on the road. After that, coming back to the front, we want to have a nice look at our hitch and I'll explain you what exactly do you want to check on it. So the hitch ideally needs to look nice and clean from all sides. Everything to be able to operate correctly. The primary and the secondary lock should engage freely without need to push them too much or hardly. Your breakaway cable should be in place, so would your jockey wheel, and seeing it operate correctly. Also, you want to see your towing cable, being it a 12S, 12N or 13 pin like this one for an example, being in a good state, not squashed or too green, which will mean probably that there won't be a good connection, so the lights will not work, and your handbrake to be able to operate it on and off normally. Also, you would like to see if there is some information about the actual hitch itself, which is usually hidden in places like these covers. So what I've had experience before, I'll let you in as a little trick. This Caravan actually had a problem with the hitch, so I found out when it actually turned up to me. But before you purchase your Caravan, have a look if the hitch is operating correctly, which means the shock needs to be able to move nice and tight. It'll be really hard for you to push it, because it's supposed to usually take the force of the actual weight of the Caravan stopping towards the car. But if it moves easily in and out, that is almost certainly a message that the shock will need replacing soonly. Also, when you grab the front of the hitch and you do this, there shouldn't be any excess movement or rattling in there, because that could mean maintenance has been skipped and parts inside the hitch will need replacing to be able to operate correctly. Take a note of that. So these are what we could say your stand-up checks, just walking around the Caravan and making sure that it looks good as a body. But now we want to go down low to check the underside of the Caravan, because that is again a very important place that almost everyone misses, but it ends up being very crucial. So what we want to do for the underside is to go right underneath the Caravan and have a nice look at what the underside looks like. The wooden floor in the corners needs to be nice and solid. You shouldn't have any soft bits going from the corners along towards the wheel arches. You need to perform this check on all 4 corners of the Caravan, just to be sure that there's no damage to the floor, there's no sogginess to it as well, because if there's something wrong when you're doing your external checks, you'll see it when we get to the inside. But whilst doing that, you want to have a look at the chassis as well, because you're already on the floor and the chassis can tell you if the Caravan has had any damage on the underside. Look for rust, bends, or anything that don't look right to you. You don't need to be a mechanic to spot that. Just have a good look around if there's any places that concern you, and ask the seller what happened. He might be able to tell you a little bit more about the story of the Caravan. Also, whilst looking on the underside, make sure you find where your spare tire is. In this case, we've got it on a swing, as they call it, sitting right underneath the middle of the Caravan. In different models, they're placed in different places. Just make sure you know where it is, because if you need to use it and you realize that you don't have one, then you're going to jump into an even more interesting story. Also, in our lower checks, have a look at your tires, the condition and the tread you've got on them. Very important as well is to check the dot number. It's not recommended for you to drive around in tires that are older than 5 years. This might need replacing. Again, it'll reflect on the end price. Also, if you've got anything like motor movers or hydraulic jack systems that is all located on the underside of the Caravan, make sure you have a nice look at that, because as it being a convenience for you in the use, if it's not operating correctly, it'll mean again you have to cough up more out of your wallet to get them sorted. Now that we've sort of rounded all the visual inspections on the outside of the Caravan, as the middle part and the lower bit, which is really important and you need not to forget about that. Before we move to the roof, I would like to show you the last thing that you want to check whilst you're circling your Caravan on the outside. So going along the Caravan, you've got all these little openings, which are for different things on your Caravan. You want to have a nice look in them, externally that is. Make sure that it's sitting nice and tight to the body, that the sealant is in the correct place, and that there's nothing that looks bad whilst you're just observing them on the outside. After that, you want to open them and have a good look inside. What is happening in there? How does the frame still sit? If there is any issues, just here in these areas, close to the floor and to the walls as well. Squeeze everywhere to get an impression of how the cabinet is looking on the inside. You need to do that to all openings, big and small, just to be sure that everything operates correctly and that you won't have to replace any locks or doors that you might have in your new Caravan. Probably the most important ones, I would say, are the places like this, where your battery sits and where your 240 power enters to the Caravan. Also here you might have a switch for your motor mover if you've got one. You need to make sure that all these are sitting correctly to the body of the Caravan. There is no place where water can get in, so that does not cause you grief later down the line. Also, you want to have a look at where your water enters your Caravan. If you've got the pump later on, to check if all that is working, but just externally to be sure that this is in a good shape, it's not smashed up, or if there's nothing worrying to it. The last and probably most important cabinet that you want to look in the Caravan is the front compartment, because that holds usually quite a few things in there. It's got your gas bottles, your entry gas point that runs into the Caravan, and also it'll show if you've got any additional accessories with it. But the most important points of this cabinet are not what you see straight away with your eyes. They're hidden in the sides and at the top. Let me show you. When opening up the cabinet, you do see gas bottles if you have any, but this is all relatively not that important information. Where you want to have a look is there. It's in the corner, because usually, even though these compartments are fully covered up with sheeting, you could still see the frame on the ends above your head, which will give you a nice clear example of what's happening underneath the panel. Now, what do I want to say with that? You looking at the external of the Caravan, you just see the condition of the sheeting, the panels that cover the front and the back, but you don't get an impression of what's going on with the wooden frame, which is inside, considering you're looking at a wooden frame Caravan. That being a little bit different with the little bit more modern Caravans that are having no wood in their frames anymore and are consisting of an aluminium frame, which will obviously not rot. But with these ones, early 2000s up to 2010, maybe 12, you do still get your wooden frame Caravans, which you need to inspect very carefully because the wooden frame can rot. So have a good look in there for any signs that might direct your attention when you go on the inside of the Caravan. I almost forgot to mention, make sure you know where the grills are situating on your Caravan. These are the back ends of your fridge. You need to know that because these places are your access points later on if you want to have any work done to your fridge. Otherwise, you have to take it fully out from the inside and then work on it. Just be sure that they're in there, they're not gonna fall off. That's what you want to know for the time being. Later on, we'll get into more depth with them. And now, coming up to the most important thing I believe everyone is missing when looking at a Caravan: the roof. I would strongly suggest you bring a ladder with you next time you go for a look at a Caravan. And now you realize why. Having that view is something you're really interested in. So being on top of the Caravan is probably the most important aspect of the entirety of the body. That being said, people very rarely do check the top. I will show you now what you need to have a look at when you're up here, just to make your mind at ease. And don't worry later on that water will just start dripping straight away through your roof. Whilst being up here, you have a nice good view at the top connections, all the places that the panels are joined on the Caravan. Like here, for example, where the side and the top panel are joined to each other through this railing. All the additives that are put in here, you want to have a nice good look if they're still in good shape, because they might not be as good as you think. They might need replacing, for example here, or around the hatches. Also, in my opinion, having a look at the roof of the Caravan tells you a lot about the previous owners, because people neglect the roof, but it's actually a very important place that you need to take care of, because all the problems usually start out from the top, even though they show down at the bottom, but that's the way water works. It trickles down and goes to the lowest spot of the Caravan. But if the roof of the Caravan is clean, I would say that the previous owners looked after it well. But again, just to be vigilant, look around all openings and everything that you might have on top, like the top of the flue pipe for your space heater or your aerial connection. Everything needs to be inspected very carefully, just so you're aware if it needs attention or not. And here we come to the most crucial point, or at least for me, for the top of the Caravan. This being the place where the back panel and the roof panel joints. You've got a strip that connects them. Sometimes that is on the top, like in this instance. Sometimes that is on the back. If it's on the back, it's way easier for you to visually inspect it. But on the top, this is a major point where a lot of problems start from. Saying that, what do I mean? This panel is made out of fiberglass, which is a full piece going all the way down to the bottom. The other panels are aluminium sheeted with wooden frame in there. So the place where these two join is covered with a strip with additive underneath, which keeps everything nice and sealed. But with time, these strips, if they have screws in them, or like this one where it's just stuck on top, they lose their qualities and they start flexing about, which means opens up a pathway for water to go through here and either trickle on your roof, to the wall, or on the back panel all the way down. That will then start making problems inside, either in your walls or straight away down in your floor. but you noticing these areas will help you identify where to look more closely on the inside and how to spot any problems, which is usually hidden underneath the surface. And there you have it. This is all of the checks I will do if I turn up to have a look at a caravan. I believe they summarize everything that you need to be aware of on the outside, being paneling, railings, windows, compartments, doors, roof, and all the joints where you need to be vigilant of any water ingress, because that will show on the inside, trust me. But if you don't feel confident or comfortable doing an inspection of this sort on a caravan, I do help people to have a second opinion and a good look at a caravan before they purchase it. If you want to find out more about that, the information is going to be in the description. But for now, we'll stop the video here, having a look only of the outside of the caravan. Join me next time so we can continue with the internal inspection of the caravan, so I can explain to you about the appliances and all the areas that you need to monitor before you actually pay the price for your new caravan.